Ashley Bookish from, and I am back with another video. So I asked in a vlog, I think, if people wanted to see an updated annotation video, and I got a overwhelming group of individuals saying yes, that they wanted to see my annotation video. I believe I have like 2 or 3 annotation videos. I can't really remember. Maybe it's only 2 annotation videos that I've already done before, but my annotation has evolved even from those 2 videos, so it's always great to do an updated annotation video so you all are kind of aware of how I annotate my stuff. So we're going to do this video in 2 different parts. The first part, I'm just going to be talking about why I annotate and the supplies that I use, and then the second half of the video I will show you how my annotations have evolved by doing flip throughs of some of the books that I have annotated across the past maybe 4 years or something like that. So annotations, I know that everybody is not a big fan of annotating. There are those of us that love annotating and love to annotate every physical book that we get our hands on. There are individuals out there that like annotating only after they've read a book and they know it's a book that they want to keep, or they only annotate their favorite books. And then there are those who are strictly, I'm not writing in my books, it's defacing, it's wrong, it should be made illegal. So I'm sure there's other subgroups in there, but those are a lot of the opinions that I see across the spectrum of annotating. Annotating is not a new process to me. It is a process that I have been doing since high school. I had an AP Lit, I think he taught me for actually English 4 honors and AP Literature, and he was very big on his students annotating because he felt like it was a way for us to better engage with the text, read slowly, and really digest whatever the author was trying to get across. Since then, it has just been a habit of mine to annotate. My annotation process clearly has grown across time, but I feel like annotating is definitely a way for me to engage and really appreciate the text. And then it's also fun to reread books that you have annotated because you see how your thoughts and ideas about certain passages and characters and plot development have changed, and it's just fun. I also find that annotation helps when I need to go back and reference things whenever I'm writing reviews. I did that a lot when I was updating and writing on my blog, but I have since stopped doing that. So now I kind of use that as a reference when I do my full written reviews on Goodreads. So it's nice to be able to flip back through the text and actually read and figure out exactly how I felt about certain parts. Unfortunately, it's something that I can't do with audio. So a lot of times when I am listening to audio, I may make notations just in like a notepad on my phone, or I may write it down on like a scrap sheet of paper that I have lying around. But if I have a book physically and I'm reading a book, my first aim and goal usually is to annotate to make sure that I am really connecting and engaging and appreciating whatever the author has put forward, even if it's a book that I don't like, because I have annotated books where I'm like, this was a dumpster fire and I didn't enjoy it, but I can specifically pinpoint passages that led me to that decision of really disliking the book, and that is definitely clear for Children of Virtue and Vengeance. I annotated the crap out of that book and I absolutely hated it. Alright, so in terms of my supplies, I use 3 main things. Well, kind of 4-ish, I don't know. I get kind of weird about this. I don't have a system. So I know a lot of people have systems where they will tell you that certain colors always stand for something, and you'll see that I don't follow that for every single book because I feel like every single book has different things to put forward. So I'll explain what I mean. So this is my annotation bag. This is where I keep all of my extra pens and tabs and doodads and all that good jazz and stuff. This is just a pouch that I believe came in an Hour Crate box when I was still subscribed to them, and I was like, this is perfect because I needed a pencil pouch to keep everything in, and this is slightly bigger than a traditional pencil pouch, so it's able to hold all of my pens, all of my highlighters, all of my sticky tabs and post-it notes and etc. Okay, so the current sticky tabs that I use are these that you can get from Amazon, I'll link the link down below of where I purchased them. And originally I was just using and you'll see, I was originally just using the 5 color tabs. So it was usually just pink, orange, yellow, green, and blue. But I found that I was needing more tabs for different things, so I decided to expand it to the 10 colors. And like I was saying before, so a lot of people who do annotations usually say that each color for them means something for every book that they read. Like pink may always mean love, orange may always mean something. I don't know, because I can't remember everybody's system in particular. I don't do that. So my system literally changes every time that I read a book, because every book, in my opinion, has something different to offer that I personally can't fit within the confines of a generalized system. So although I do use these tabs, when you come across my books, these tabs will mean different things for different books. The only 2 colors that I can say for sure that usually do not change are probably green and blue. I kind of stick to green for plot development and blue for character development. That has just become a consistent thing. But the 2 purples, yellow, the orange, and the pink can mean different, completely different things. So I use these pens. These are just Papermate Inkjoy pens, and I use these just to underline passages. And people are like, aren't you just being extra? Okay, the reason why, and you're gonna think I'm being super extra when I tell you the next step. So the reason why that I use these is that I don't tab while I'm reading. What mostly I will do is I will use a bookmark as my ruler, and I will underline and make notations in book as I'm reading. Once I'm done for my reading, or like if I set like, oh, I want to read for 30 minutes to an hour, whatever reading sprint that I set, after that is when I'll go back through and I will tab. It slows me down a little too much to actually tab and highlight while I'm reading. So I got these pens to color code. That way when I go back, I don't have to guess exactly why I decided to highlight or make a reference to this certain passage. So these pens will align with whatever section I'm talking about. This one purple goes for both purple colors, and I often use black for yellow because yellow pen just, yeah. I also highlight. So it's probably like, you're doing so much, but I do. I also highlight the section that I've underlined with my pens. So I do have colors for every tab, and these are midliner pens that are double end. So they have these really, I don't know if you will be able to see that. See if yeah. So they have those fine tip points, but then they have these points, which are the points that I actually end up using as a highlighter. So these are really cool, and I found these, I believe, at Target, so I can link those down below too if you want to see them. And the last thing that I have, some of my books are really outrageous, like the amount of writing that I do in them. Some of them are pretty outrageous. I do have these post-it notes, and these post-it notes, usually I don't use these as often as you think I may use them. This is for when I really have some serious commentary that I want to make that cannot fit within the margins of a book, and I don't have enough space to say what I want to say. I'm currently reading a book where there is a passage or a section that really resonated with me, and I thought had some pretty significance, some pretty huge historical significance. So I had to go back in with a post-it note and kind of write down how I felt. These don't stand for anything. I don't use these as a system. It's usually whatever color I grab first is what I use. All right, y'all, so we are going to switch over, and I am going to show you the 4 examples that I'm going to use. I'm going to use Anna Karenina, which is one of the earlier books that I have read and annotated. I'm going to show you Kingdom of Souls, which is one that I use my old tabs with in an older system. I'm going to show you Children of Bone, which I recently reread, and this one actually has the newer system in it. And then I'm going to show you a recent read, A Silent Voice, of how I annotate my graphic novels, manga, and comics. Okay, y'all, so what's really interesting about this is that my annotation system back in the day wasn't really a system. I usually would just stick tabs wherever I could stick tabs. I don't even know why I did what I did. There's nothing in the front kind of saying why I was tabbing the book or why I was using specific colors. I just used whatever tabs I had on hand. And what you'll see in the process of this is that I was using any colors that I really wanted to use. I was not really writing particularly a lot of information. I really don't really remember why I was gauging with some certain things. It was usually just messy, and a lot of it had to do with how I was feeling in the moment. What you're seeing is a lot of emotional reactions to the text, and not necessarily any deep dive of the significance of why it's important to the novel. I really had fun reading Anna Karenina, but if I was to go back and read this, I know that my annotations would look significantly different because I'm about to start my reread of the part that I finished in the Count of Monte Cristo, and I know that my annotations for that are going to be crazy because my annotation has changed. So in this first part, you can see it, like I said before, I just used any type of colors that I wanted. I wasn't really down with the system. I just used yellow tabs because I wanted them all to be yellow, and I really wasn't engaging with the text as much as I probably do now. There were even some parts that I just stuck a tab on and didn't really say anything about why it would have been important to the overall novel. Fast forward a couple of years later and we have a new system. So this is Kingdom of Souls by Rena Barron, one novel that I actually did really enjoy in 2019. So what I started doing in here, as you can see, is that I started making notations of the colors of the tabs. So these tabs are actually bigger than the tabs that I showed you on screen, but I started using the tabs for certain things, and I use this as a key in the beginning of all of my novels. So this is not the only one that I've done this in, but I just thought this was a good example. I started putting these keys in the beginning of these novels. That way, when I went back, I had a reference point for what each tab meant, because I knew that they were going to be changing from novel to novel. So specifically for Rena Barron's, I said that pink was this historical cultural moments, yellow was God perspectives, blue was plot development, character development. So these are the two colors that I was talking about, that I think I kind of got into a system of these kind of remaining the same, but and I just have kind of maintained that, but that these three colors were constantly changing. So I know for a lot of people, pink, when they use your tabs, means love, but as you can see here, like, even if there was romance, I really wasn't paying attention. And then I really like this in orange, that for this book specifically, I decided to focus on beautifully intriguing passages. And one thing that I didn't say in the other clips was that I usually don't know how I'm going to annotate a book until I start reading a few chapters. Once I start noticing a certain pattern or things that I'm liking, that's when I really make a reference point of what I want to annotate and what I want to focus on whenever I read the book. So just doing a brief flip through here, you can see that I was actually underlining in black pen, which became problematic, and that's why you're going to see the system change in Children of Blood and Bone. It became problematic because I was finding that I would read and underline stuff in black ink and then not really remember why I had underlined that certain passage, and then I would end up having to read the passage multiple times to see where it fit into the system. So this was really cool. In some books, I actually do underline words that I'm not familiar with, and I try to do as much background research on the book as possible. So in a lot of these, you'll see terms that I wasn't really familiar with prior to reading the novel. And then sometimes what I'll do here is that there'll be multiple parts within the text that I'm really interested in. And this is where the annotations, quote unquote, get really, really beautiful. So as you can see, I had a lot of fun annotating this one, and this is going to be fun for me to reread because the next book comes out next year. So I will be rereading with my annotations to see how I feel about the text. So the next one that we have here is Children of Blood and Bone, and this is one that I have a interesting relationship with. You all know I've done a reading vlog for both Children of Blood and Bone and Children of Virtue and Vengeance, and this is one where, even though I've read this book before I read Kingdom of Souls, I did a reread and I didn't annotate it the first time. So I went back, this one's a signed copy, I went back and annotated it, and this is where we see my latest method of annotating. So we still see the same thing that was in Kingdom of Souls, except this one has more sticky tabs, and it has, of course, different, you see that plot and character development stay the same colors. I actually did use the pink for romance, but an orange in this one is focused on social commentary, and the two purples, one is quotes and one actually has gods and magic exploration, and then there's also one tab where I actually did term exploration for looking at some things that I didn't necessarily understand. So just flipping through the text, you can see here that I am super engaged with it. I had a lot to say. And actually, I'm going to show you Children of Virtue and Vengeance as well, because even in here there are some differences between Children of Blood and Bone and Children of Virtue and Vengeance. So in these I actually used a black pen to highlight, and it was so difficult. It was so difficult, but you can see just how much I engaged with the text and how I use this system. And this was before I got the midliners, so the colors weren't necessarily matching up, and I couldn't necessarily highlight in the color that matched the tab. But I have a lot, or had a lot, to say about these as well, especially in the social commentary part. But let's switch over to Children of Virtue and Vengeance so you can see the most updated version. Okay, so one thing that I think that I do keep up is that whenever I am reading a series, I do use the same system in the series. Not from book to book if they're not in the same series, but in the same series I will use the same system. So in Children of Blood and Bone, there was that system that you saw before that I used, and it's the same thing here. I use the same system. So here, what you will see is later on, when I actually got all my pens, I actually start underlining in the color that I was making a reference to, highlighting in color, and writing in that color. And I feel like this is where my annotating gets really colorful. Which is always cool. It's neat. If you haven't read this, try not to read any of the pages. But yes, this is definitely where my annotating gets really colorful. This is probably one of my favorite pages because I tore into this book, okay? I really tore into this book because I had some serious feelings about it. But you can see here, like, I really engage with what I'm reading and how I feel about it and what I'm seeing the author do, and especially when the author changes a lot from book to book, it makes me feel some type of way sometimes. But yeah, so that's an example of the newer system. Okay, so for my graphic novels, comics, and manga, I really don't have a system. There's no writing usually. There's no highlighting or anything like that. I do not take a highlighter to my graphic works because it would take away from the art itself, and that's what they are. They're graphic, they're art-based work, so that's kind of a no-no for me. But I do usually make a reference to plots that I find really interesting, or basically artwork that I find beautiful. So like for example in this, I found this spread to be really pretty. So I usually just use any tab. There's no color coding or anything like that. And I just make a reference to it. Or if there's something that's stated within the book that I really enjoy, or something that's kind of like a twist, I make sure that I make a note of it. And usually those are things that I use for a reference, and it's usually not a lot. You won't find me tabbing a whole lot in a graphic work, but I just wanted to show people because I do tab my graphic works as well, especially if there's sections that I really relate to, or sections that I find super important to the narrative of the. All right, y'all, so I hope you enjoyed. I hope this annotation video made sense. Let me know in the comments whether you annotate your videos or not, whether you enjoy annotating your videos. I was really happy that so many of you all wanted to see a updated annotation video. I will continue to annotate as long as possible. Whenever I read a physical book, if you notice in my like wrap-ups, those are the books that I usually annotate. Even if it's a library copy, I do end up annotating it some way somehow, so which is usually just putting it at tabs. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more content from me, click the subscribe button. Remember, I upload every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, with the occasional video on a Saturday or Sunday. If you want to follow me on social media, all of my links will be down in the description box below. I hope you all have a wonderful evening, and I'll be back with another video soon.